watch out for the blitz. If you in the pocket, better pull real quick. Okay.
I ain't mad at him, though. Sugar's always gonna be sugar.
And that's why, I was feeling some kind of way bringing up anything called now.
He is an immortal black legend of Hollywood, the golden goose of Suge Knight's empire, the name that brought the West Coast era back to life. But behind that spotlight, Kurupt Twins has always hidden dark truths. He was once accused of causing financial losses for Death Row Records. He once had to file for bankruptcy because he did not understand business law. He was once pointed at directly by DMX and accused of stealing a girlfriend right at the peak of fame. Did you ever believe that Kurupt destroyed his own career because of drugs? That is only the easiest story to tell, the easiest to swallow. Do not look away. The curtain of truth is about to be lifted, and the final secret will shock you. Kurupt Twins. From the streets to the rap temple. Kurupt real name. Ricardo Emmanuel Brown was born on November 23, 1972 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Unlike many rappers of his generation who grew up in chaos or extreme violence, Kurupt's childhood was relatively stable. There were no brutal street stories like Tupac's, nor the suffocating survival imprint of Nas in Queensbridge. Kurupt's Philadelphia was a rich hip-hop environment, where rap was seen as a language of thought, not merely a means of escaping poverty. He began rapping at just 8 years old and grew up immersed in the city's hip-hop culture. His parents were Sharon Hill Brown and Joe Max Collins, and he has a younger brother named Roscoe, who also became a rapper. At 16, Kurupt moved to California, first settling in Hawthorne before relocating to the Crenshaw area of South Los Angeles at 18. This transition exposed him to the rapidly growing West Coast hip-hop scene. It was here that Kurupt's musical path truly began to take shape. His official recording career launched in 1991 with several tracks appearing on albums by the SOS Band. However, the biggest turning point also came in 1991 when he met Snoop Dogg at the Roxy Theater. According to accounts, the two engaged in a rap battle for 15 to 20 minutes before recognizing each other's power. Because it was a confrontation, it became the beginning of a deep bond. Snoop promised he would help Kurupt even after he became famous. An extravagant promise, but one that Snoop truly kept. Kurupt was soon introduced to Dr. Dre, and in 1992, he signed with Death Row Records. Shortly after, he appeared on two foundational albums of American hip-hop, The Chronic and Doggy Style. The chemistry between Kurupt and these artists was undeniable, and their collaborations quickly became classics that still resonate with fans today. With fame and success arriving so quickly, Kurupt's rise was never smooth. He faced criticism, competition, and constant pressure to deliver new hits. Even so, he remained loyal to his art and continuously pushed creative boundaries. In 1992, Kurupt and Daz Dillinger formed Thaw Dog Pound, a historic rap group. They released their debut album Dog Food in 1995. The album received widespread critical acclaim, winning listeners over with raw energy and uncompromising lyrics. Kurupt's gunshot-fast flow and razor-sharp delivery highlighted his exceptional talent, earning him recognition as one of the most technical rappers of his generation. Dog Food quickly became a classic and cemented Thaw Dog Pound as a major force in rap. Early success with Thaw Dog Pound opened countless doors for Kurupt. The rap world quickly took notice of his elite skills, and he became a highly sought-after collaborator. During this period, Kurupt was nearly unstoppable, and his potential seemed limitless. He later continued to prove his craft through famous confrontations with Ice Cube and MC8, with tracks like Calling Out Names and Ask Yourself a Question, showcasing his ability to deliver cold-cutting bars. But as media began turning beef into entertainment, the original spirit of hip-hop slowly eroded. Pressure scrutiny and constant expectations began weighing heavily on Kurupt. His music remained sharp, but beneath it were increasingly visible inner conflicts. From an unstoppable force, Kurupt began to slow down. And from here, his real story was about to take an unexpected turn. Pulling back the curtain on Death Row Heaven, where careers slowly die. In the late 1990s, Kurupt made a bold decision to leave Death Row Records to pursue a solo career. This was a major turning point, allowing him to establish his own identity outside of Thaw Dog Pound. He quickly signed with Entra Records, which offered him the creative freedom to express his unique style. However, a wave of questions began to surface. Why did Kurupt leave Death Row Records so quickly? Anyone in hip-hop knew that Death Row Records was far more powerful than Entra Records, especially in the 1990s. It was the ultimate West Coast power ecosystem under the rule of Suge Knight. Countless rumors swirled around the label's ability to build or destroy an artist's career in an instant. So what could possibly be big enough to make him turn his back on a position others would trade their entire lives to keep? The main reason was believed to be conflict with gangsta mogul Suge Knight, disputes over money and publishing rights, internal power struggles within Death Row. And as you might expect, this split was anything but peaceful, especially after the death of Tupac Shakur in 1996, which became the final straw. Death Row Records began to decline. Daz Dillinger, Snoop Dogg, and Kurupt all sought ways to escape Suge Knight and the increasingly toxic label. For Kurupt in particular, his close relationship with Tupac was vital. Tupac was like a shield for him. When Tupac died, that shield vanished forever, making it painfully clear to Kurupt that Death Row was no longer safe for anyone. He once said that even with Suge Knight present, they still had to stay alert as if they were standing on the streets. And when a label forces its artists to live in constant vigilance, trust inevitably runs dry. Another thing fans easily noticed was that Kurupt's personal style never truly fit Death Row Records. Death Row demanded larger-than-life personas, heavy drama, and overwhelming image power. Those were things Kurupt could not and did not want to provide. He spoke less, avoided scandal, and never built a personal myth. In an environment where Tupac, Snoop, and Dr. Dre constantly dominated the spotlight, Kurupt had little chance of becoming a solo priority unless the label actively pushed him. Was he out of sync with Death Row's culture from the very beginning? If he stayed, he risked being swallowed by louder names and the label's drama-driven culture. Leaving was the smarter choice for long-term musical survival, even if it meant sacrificing image leverage and market power. Then, a detail emerged that made every theory more questionable. While the public debated whether Kurupt left by choice, another rumor quietly spread. Did he really leave on his own terms? Or was he forced out of the game before he could choose? According to testimony from Reggie Wright Jr., former head of security at Death Row Records, Kurupt was forced out in 1996 due to involvement with an underage girl. Reggie Wright Jr. publicly labeled Kurupt a pervert and claimed this was the real reason the young rapper was expelled from the label. The girl's parents were said to have discovered the situation, but instead of exposing everything and bringing Kurupt before California law, the matter somehow went silent. A large compensation settlement was rumored to have taken place quietly. And that was allegedly why Suge Knight sent Kurupt home and told him, "I think you need to go stay with your mother for a while." This scandal, though never verified in court, left behind an indelible question. And sometimes a single question is enough to permanently end an artist's image in the public eye. Bankruptcy, scandal, and a massive lawsuit. A genius who did not know the rules. As if that were not enough, Kurupt was soon pulled into another legal vortex. And this time the story was no longer simply about right or wrong. In 1990, while still very young and almost completely unaware of contract law, Kurupt signed an agreement with brothers Lamont and Ken Brumfield, loosely managing representatives of Rap Central Productions and Hoodsta 4 Life Publishing. They claimed they had signed him while he was still a minor. However, Johnny Cochran, the famed attorney mentioned in the case, never submitted that contract to the court for approval. The contract existed on paper, but it was never certified by the court. Under the law, any contract signed with someone under 18 must be approved by a judge to be valid. Yet years later, the former managers returned, asserting they still controlled Kurupt's career. And the question emerged: if the contract was invalid, why was it still being used as leverage to silence an artist? Things grew even more suspicious. In 1993, when Suge Knight and Death Row Records signed Kurupt to a new deal without releasing him from the old one, Suge Knight appeared to ignore all prior obligations as if the law only mattered when convenient. A legal mess formed where no one took direct responsibility, yet the consequences were very real. In the end, Death Row Records became the party paying for the fallout. Initially, the figure mentioned was around $10 million, later reduced to $4 million. But regardless of the amount it raised, another question: was the money paid to settle a dispute, or to ensure certain stories were never reopened? On May 14, 1997, Kurupt filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to escape unfavorable contracts. On paper, it was a financial move, but bankruptcy did more than erase debt. It froze the entire story. It blurred the lines of responsibility, and it ensured that many details would never have to surface publicly. Was bankruptcy saving an artist, or saving the secrets that came with him? What stands out is that Kurupt never countersued. He did not launch a loud defense. He accepted bankruptcy, stayed silent, and years later returned to Death Row Records itself. If he was completely innocent and merely a victim of the system, why return to the very place that caused all the chaos? Death Row lost the case. Death Row was the source of the mess. Yet Kurupt still came back. And that decision, more than any legal ruling, turned this case into a scandal that can never be fully explained. Did he return for money? Or because there were things he could never say? By 2002, Kurupt had almost no options left. His solo career failed to generate stable income. Old legal consequences still followed him, and hip-hop had changed the rules. In that context, he made a shocking decision, returning to Death Row Records as vice president and executive. Officially, it was a survival strategy, but to those who once stood beside him, it felt like betrayal. After Tupac's death, Death Row was seen as dead. The West Coast believed Suge Knight was about to lose everything. Kurupt's return was viewed as siding with the enemy. Daz Dillinger was especially furious, believing Kurupt should have helped him escape Death Row instead of returning to run the very system. The feud exploded. Daz released You Ain't Shit and I Don't Give a Fuck. Kurupt fired back with the album originals highlighted by Eat a Dick Fuck Daz. Tensions escalated. The Death Row studio was shot at. Snoop Dogg publicly criticized Kurupt. By 2005, Snoop stepped in to mediate. Kurupt and Daz spoke openly and realized they had both been used by Death Row. The feud ended. Brothers were still brothers. Downfall. Due to drugs. A legend exaggerated. People often tell Kurupt's downfall, like a familiar script in American hip-hop. A talented rapper. The pressure of fame. Then drugs. Then self-destruction. A straight line that is simple, easy to understand, easy to tell. But the problem is Kurupt's collapse does not look like that of a typical addicted rapper. And that difference is exactly why this story deserves to be questioned again. Did he use substances? Yes. There is no need to deny that. When his personal life began to fracture, when relationships fell apart, when legal and financial consequences from the past hit all at once, Kurupt turned to addictive substances as a way to escape. Not to party, not to show off, but to numb himself. The pressure of once standing at the top and then sliding into silence, combined with the feeling of being abandoned by the very system that once nurtured him quietly, but persistently eroded his mental health. Within inner circles, Kurupt's involvement with drugs was no secret. Everyone knew, but no one spoke about it. Not because they were covering it up, but because it did not create a media explosion big enough. There was no long prison sentence, no industry ban, no dramatic disappearance from the scene as many imagined. Instead, there was a slow, prolonged, hard-to-pinpoint decline. From a rapper once overflowing with energy on stage, Kurupt gradually became a shadow of himself. Not because he lost his skills, but because he lost the motivation to prove them to a world that had already turned away. Substance abuse began to fracture the relationships around him. Close friends slowly kept their distance, not out of hatred, but out of fear of being pulled into a negative spiral. His family repeatedly urged him to seek help. The pleas came again and again. But at that time, Kurupt did not believe his problem was drugs. He believed the problem was being abandoned, misunderstood, and replaced in an industry that no longer valued what he did best. As his career stalled, Kurupt's finances collapsed along with it. Contracts that once provided stable income disappeared. Record sales dropped. Touring became less frequent. Revenue streams that sustained him during his peak vanished faster than he could adapt. In desperation, Kurupt turned to unclear ways of making money, not out of greed, but because clear options no longer existed. This only pushed him further away from the industry's formal support systems. Alongside that came a series of legal troubles: possession of illegal substances, driving under the influence, Assault allegations. None were large enough to end his career instantly, but enough to slowly erode his reputation. Courtrooms became familiar places. Time, money, and energy were drained into endless legal battles. Meanwhile, music, the thing that should have been his escape, was pushed aside. Record labels began to hesitate. No one wanted to bet on an artist the media associated with the word unstable. Not because Kurupt could no longer rap, but because he no longer fit how the industry operated. Damaged relationships could not be repaired. Old friends stopped showing up. Family grew tired of repeated disappointment. Trust once broken is not easily rebuilt. And in that silence, the image of a West Coast star slowly faded, not through an explosion, but through prolonged indifference. Kurupt continued to spiral. Arrests for possession, incidents of drunk driving, seemingly minor events repeated often enough to cement a negative image. Show cancellations became routine. Musical quality grew inconsistent. Loyal fans gradually drifted away, not because they hated him, but because they no longer knew what to expect from him. Eventually, Kurupt was forced to admit that he needed help. He entered rehab. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time carried hope for a restart. And each time ended with him struggling to stay sober in a world where he felt he no longer belonged. Relapses were not signs of weakness, but proof that Kurupt's problem ran deeper than the simple addiction narrative the public was used to hearing. And this is where the biggest question emerges. Was drugs simply the easiest story to tell, allowing the industry and the audience to simplify a complex collapse? Did labeling it a downfall due to addiction help cover the truth that Kurupt lost momentum because the market shifted, because the stage no longer had room for pure technique, and because a new generation of listeners no longer had the patience for what he did best? In other words, Kurupt did not fall because of addiction. He fell because he rapped too well for an era that no longer needed that level of skill. And when the story is told in its simplest form, people forget the most important thing: not every silence is a failure, and not every addiction is the root cause. The viral era Kurupt lost the new game. There was a time when rap won through verses, through dense bars, through internal technique that only those who truly understood hip-hop could recognize. Then the rules changed, and Kurupt felt it earlier than most, even if he never said it out loud. When hip-hop entered the viral era, the stage was no longer in the studio or on albums. It moved to phone screens where personality mattered more than technique. Memes were stronger than substance, and social media decided who was still visible. In that new world, Kurupt almost did not exist. He did not like public relations. He did not like scripted comeback stories. He did not turn his life into a series of confessions to chase views. He also refused to play the role of the elder statesman appearing only to lecture younger artists and relive past glory. For Kurupt, rap was still rap, not an entertainment product that needed extra gimmicks to sell. But the market did not agree. When hip-hop became an attention-based ecosystem, rap technique was no longer the strongest currency. Algorithms did not reward internal rhyme. They rewarded shocking statements, easily clipped visuals, moments that could turn into memes. And in that game, Kurupt's silence became a fatal disadvantage. No new scandal, no new narrative, no new image for the algorithm to latch onto. He was not hated, but he was not remembered either. What matters is that Kurupt did not lose because he lacked ability. He lost because he refused to change his essence to fit a stage he did not trust. While many of his peers chose to adapt, repackaging their past into stories edited for the times, Kurupt remained still within an older standard. And when the spotlight moved on, that loyalty turned into the very thing that left him behind. The question is not only for Kurupt: is this a personal failure, or the failure of an entire ecosystem that changed its rules too fast and too coldly? When rap is no longer judged by music, but by attention, where do those who believe in pure art go? And Kurupt is not the only case. How many other geniuses have vanished from public view simply because they refused to perform for the camera, refused to turn their lives into fast consumption content? When hip-hop was once a place that celebrated skill, is this viral era selecting talent or eliminating those who refuse to bow to the new rules? A respected rapper abandoned by the algorithm. A cold paradox hangs over Kurupt's post-peak career. He is deeply respected within the rapper community, yet he has gradually disappeared from the view of younger audiences. And that gap does not come from a lack of talent, it comes from the algorithm. It is no coincidence that names like Eminem, Ice Cube, or DJ Quick have repeatedly and publicly expressed their respect for Kurupt. In the rapper's world, where every word is dissected and every cadence is measured, Kurupt is a benchmark. Dense internal rhyme, complex sentence structures, the ability to shift flow without relying on hooks. These are the qualities that make rappers stop, listen, study, and respect. But the problem is that hip-hop is no longer decided by careful listeners. It is decided by measurement systems. Algorithms do not reward internal rhyme. Streaming does not reward technique. What gets prioritized is listen time shareability lines that can be clipped into 15-second videos. In that world, a verse that requires focus becomes a liability. A rap song without a clear hook becomes a risk. And an artist who does not build a social media persona almost does not exist. Kurupt did not change to adapt. He does not like PR. He does not tell comeback stories. He does not play the role of the elder statesman just to be remembered through nostalgia. He continues to rap the way he always has, as if the audience still has the same patience they did 20 years ago. The result is a strange position. Kurupt becomes a rapper's rapper. Someone rappers respect, but young fans do not know where to find. Someone quoted in the studio but rarely seen on the charts. This is not entirely a personal failure. It is a systemic one. When hip-hop enters the data era, value is measured by streams instead of the weight of words. When algorithms decide who is seen and who fades away. In a world like that, artists who rely purely on technique become the easiest to abandon. And the question is not only for Kurupt. When algorithms decide who exists in modern hip-hop, what does talent really mean? If rap was once an art of depth, of careful listening and slow understanding, is Kurupt one of the first victims of a hip-hop era controlled by data? Conclusion. Did Kurupt really fail? If you look at the surface, the answer seems obvious. No more major hits, no more central position, no more constant media presence. In the logic of the modern entertainment industry, that is the standard definition of failure. But the real question is not whether Kurupt is still famous. It is what metric we are using to call someone a loser. Kurupt did not lose his career. He never disappeared from hip-hop. He still raps, still records, still appears on projects whose value is understood by those inside the industry. He was not blacklisted, not removed from the game, not stamped as washed up in a technical sense. What changed is simply that he no longer stands where the lights are focused. And in a world where spotlight is mistaken for ability, that difference becomes fatal. Kurupt also did not lose his honor. Within hip-hop, especially on the West Coast, his name has never been taken lightly. Those who understand rap, who write verses, who live by technique and rhythm, all know who he is. Kurupt's honor does not come from charts. It comes from the fact that no one can deny his influence on how rap is written and performed. That honor is quiet, not loud, but more durable than any promotional campaign. And more importantly, Kurupt did not lose respect. There is a huge difference between being hated and being forgotten. He did not become a joke. He was not mocked as a fallen artist. He simply stopped being talked about in spaces where algorithms control the narrative. The respect for him exists in places not measured by views. In the studio, backstage, in conversations without cameras. The only thing Kurupt truly lost is the spotlight. But spotlight is not a permanent value. It is a circulating resource. And hip-hop as it grew chose to shift the spotlight elsewhere. From technique to personality. From verse structure to personal stories. From linguistic depth to shareability. In that shift, Kurupt was not pushed out. He simply did not step forward. There is a painful paradox here. Kurupt did not fail because he did something wrong. He failed because he did not change at the same pace as the market. But does not changing always mean making a mistake? Or is it a choice to preserve an older definition of art while the rest moves on to a new one? Hip-hop was built on skill, on the complexity of words, on the control of rhythm and breath. Kurupt grew up in that era. He believed in it. He never saw rap as a tool for personal storytelling, nor as a backdrop for personal branding. To him, rap was action, technique, a dialogue between writer and listener. As hip-hop gradually shifted into mass entertainment where story mattered more than words and image outweighed sound, Kurupt became out of place. And here, the question in the title returns with a different meaning. What really happened to Kurupt? Not a single scandal, not one bad decision, not a spectacular fall. What really happened is that the genre kept moving forward, carrying new values with it and leaving behind those unwilling to trade their core to keep up. Kurupt was not defeated by anyone else. He was overtaken by time. And that is a very different kind of failure. It is not loud, it has no clear enemy, no dramatic collapse for the media to exploit. It happens quietly, piece by piece, as the stage changes shape, as audiences change expectations, and as art is required to adapt faster than an artist is willing to accept. If hip-hop was once art, if there was a time when technique and depth came first, then Kurupt is not the last failure of that era. He may be one of the last who still believed that rap does not need to be loved by an algorithm to have value. And if so, what really happened to Kurupt is not a scandal, but a genre that moved on without waiting for him.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.